In this lecture, we're going to look at the natural philosophers of ancient Greece. I will share my PowerPoint for you all to follow along. So when we think about the word philosophy, or according to the Greeks, philosophia, it means the love of wisdom. It concerns the nature of human behavior and our place in the universe. What is the most important thing in life? If we ask someone living on the edge of starvation, the answer is food. If we ask someone dying of cold, the answer is warmth. If we put the same question to someone who feels lonely and isolated, the answer will probably be the company of other people. But when these basic needs have been satisfied, will there be something that everybody needs? Philosophers think so. They believe that man cannot live by bread alone. Of course, everyone needs food, and everyone needs love and care. But there is something else, apart from that, which everyone needs, and that is to figure out who we are and why we are here. How was the world created? Is there any will or meaning behind what happens? Is there life after death? How can we answer these questions? And most important, how are we to live? People have asked these questions throughout the ages. We know of no culture which has not concerned itself with what man is and where the world came from. Basically, there are not many philosophical questions to ask. We have already asked some of the most important ones, but history presents us with many different answers to each question. So it is easier to ask philosophical questions than to answer them. Today, as well, each individual has to discover their own answer to these same questions. You cannot find out whether there is a God by researching it on the internet, nor does the internet provide us with information about how we ought to live. However, reading what other people have believed in can help us formulate our own view of life. All of the earliest philosophers shared the same belief that there had to be a certain basic substance at the root of all change. How they arrived at this idea is hard to say. There had to be something that all things came from and returned to. For us, the most interesting part is actually not what the solutions these early philosophers arrived at, but which questions they asked and what type of answer they were looking for. We are more interested in how they thought than in exactly what they thought. We know that they posed questions relating to the transformations they could observe in the physical world. They were looking for the underlying laws of nature. They wanted to understand what was happening around them without having to turn to the ancient myths. So the most interesting aspect of natural philosophers, or the pre-Socratic philosophers, was that they were delving into science. I have listed several pre-Socratic philosophers here to investigate what specific areas of science interested them. The first philosopher we know about is Thales, who came from Miletus, a Greek colony in Asia Minor. He traveled in many countries, including Egypt, where he is said to have calculated the height of a pyramid by measuring its shadow at the precise moment when the length of his own shadow was equal to his height. He is also said to have accurately predicted a solar eclipse in the year 585 BCE. Thales thought that the source of all things was water. We don't really know exactly what he meant by that, but we believe that all life originated from water, and he believed that all life returns to water again when it dissolves. During his travels in Egypt, he must have observed how the crops began to grow as soon as the floods of the Nile receded from the land in the Nile Delta. Perhaps he also noticed that frogs and worms appeared wherever it has been raining. Thales believed that life was filled with these invisible germs. If we look at the other philosophers, there is a lot of relation to the ideology concerning the sciences. Anaximander believed our world dissolves into other worlds. Anaximenes, a source of things come from air and vapor. Parmenides, everything that exists has always existed. Heraclitus, everything flows and constant change is the most basic characteristic of nature. Anaxagoras, fragments make up an entire concept. Let's take a look at two philosophers with contrasting viewpoints to understand how they viewed the world. Parmenides was one of the most important philosophers because he believed that everything that exists had always existed. This idea was not alien to the Greeks. They took it more or less for granted that everything that existed in the world was everlasting. Nothing can come out of nothing, thought Parmenides, and nothing that exists can become nothing. Heraclitus, who was a contemporary of Parmenides, born in Ephesus in Asia Minor, he thought that constant change or flow was in fact the most basic characteristic of nature. We could perhaps say that Heraclitus had more faith in what he could perceive than Parmenides did. Everything flows, said Heraclitus. Everything is in constant flux and movement. Nothing is abiding. Therefore, we cannot step twice into the same river. When I step into the river for the second time, neither I nor the river are the same. And in order to further exemplify both of these contrasting viewpoints, I thought I would show everyone a visual example of these philosophical ideologies. Let's investigate the philosophical viewpoints of Parmenides and Heraclitus. Although both had differing viewpoints about the world, which philosopher is correct? Parmenides believed the world did not change, and our sensory perceptions are therefore unreliable. Let's see if that is true based on the exemplification of my visual example. A standard deck of playing cards, 52 to be exact. So let's imagine that these playing cards represent the world, and one of these cards are perception. In this case, perception is the 8 of hearts. We'll place the 8 of hearts back into the deck. We'll give it a good shuffle. And we'll just find out if Parmenides' inquiry is correct. We'll say that the card is very much shuffled within the deck, but I'll have you know that the chosen card is not on the top, as you can see here, because I didn't snap my fingers, and now the chosen card arises to the top. So I showed you the entire deck of cards up close, but still your perception was unreliable. Therefore, perhaps Parmenides' perspective is correct. Heraclitus says that everything changes, but our sensory perceptions remain reliable. Let's see this idea put to the test, exemplified in another card trick. Pay close attention now. First, we select a card, the 2 of diamonds. Remember this card. Then I will write my prediction, the 8 of clubs. What are the chances that my card will appear, and the number in my card will then reveal your card? Everything in the deck changes. All things flow, but only I know how they change. I control the change, and if I told you, your perceptions would also be reliable. To some extent, both philosophers are correct. It's all a matter of perspective, but sometimes even illusions, when realized, can be real. It's how we accept reality that matters. How we accept reality depends on how we think.